up into three parts, okay? I'm going to divide it up into three parts. The terms are going to be part of this. The articles are going to be part of this, bless you. And then the chapter questions are going to be part of this as well. So basically, when you take it on Friday, the first section of questions is going to say from the readings or from the questions. It's going to be from the chapter questions. It's going to be the smallest part. Second part is basically going to be from the terms, which are these. And we're going to remove some of these today as we get started. Third section is going to be from the articles, and then you're going to have some short answers. And I think I'm basically going to give y'all maybe 5 out of 8 short answers. And I think the exam will be basically about 95 points, something along those lines. I have the room from basically 8 o'clock until noon. So if you're in the 9 o'clock class and you want to come in at 8 on Friday, that's fine, I'll be there. If you're in the 10 o'clock class and you want to come in on 8, that's fine, I'll be there. If you're in the 11 o'clock class, well, I don't want to say anytime you want, but if you want to come in early, I'm good with that. Now, the other piece to this is, if you can't stay the whole time, you can't like take it for an hour and a half and then come back and finish it. You got to do it all in one sitting. That would be the only thing. I have a room that's set up after the 11 o'clock class. Come on in. And basically, if you run long, I'll have the room on reserve so we can just move into another room. So time shouldn't be an issue. The only question is, if you're taking it at 10 and you've got a class at 9 and 11, then you know that's a decision you're going to have to make as far as that's concerned if you need extra time. But otherwise, we should be good to go. All right? So that's the first thing. Second thing with this. Take your time with this. It's going to be a little tricky. There's going to be some humor in it. Your names are going to be in there. It's not going to be like an exam you've ever seen before. And some of you say some really outrageous things sometimes. And sometimes I remember these outrageous things. So bear in mind, your name's going to be on there, and everybody's going to be on there at least once. I mean, you're the angry Peruvian, is that right? Yeah, don't film her. Yeah, it's going to happen, Elva. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, for our purposes right now, Chapter 1. Do you have any questions about anything from these Chapter 1 terms? And let's just go ahead and knock them out right now. Go ahead, Michael.
What about the presidential elections?
Presidential elections. Do you remember when I put that thing up on the board, and it was in 1992, President Clinton against Bush Daddy and H. Ross? And in 96, it was Clinton against Dole. And in 2000, it was George W. against Gore. You remember those? Do you remember what the theme was from all of those 3 elections? Because people got mad. Why did people get upset about the 2000 election?
The general population voted for Al Gore.
The majority, let me rephrase that. More people voted for Al Gore than voted for George W. It wasn't a majority, though, but more people did. Why or how was 2000 just like 96 and just like 92?
Because none of the people that became president had majority votes on the general election.
Another way of saying it, and you're right with what you just said, but another way of saying it would be a majority of the American people voted against the man that would become president. We get mad about 2000 because Gore had more votes, but either way, 51% of the American people would have voted against Gore just like they voted against W. And when you go back, 51% of the people in 96 voted against Bill Clinton, and 57% of the American people voted against Clinton in 92. That's the point. A majority of people voted against the man that became president. And I think from the outline, I even had majority rules and with a question mark behind it, because the majority didn't in those presidential elections. What else do you have from Chapter 1? Go ahead, Lamont.
What do you mean by who?
Who? We were talking about the Declaration of Independence, and I had asked you, I think it was 3 who questions and 1 what question. Okay, who wrote the Declaration? Thomas Jefferson is given credit for having written the Declaration, the father of the Declaration, if you will. Who, in fact, was the Declaration written about?
The king.
The king. It was written about the King of England, and if you remember when we went through those passages, he is obstructed, he is endeavored to prevent, he is obstructed, and it just went on and on with these negative verbs. Who was it written for?
Allies or the French?
Yeah, a lot of people said it was written for the American people. Well, they were already upset, and many of them couldn't have understood it anyway. Some people said it was written for the king. The king wasn't going to listen to all this. That was the United States of its day. It was written for potential allies, and France was the ally, if you remember, that bid on this. What was the purpose behind the Declaration of Independence? Anybody?
To declare independence.
Okay, that's a start. That's a start. What was the purpose? Go ahead, Manuel.
To stop being, they didn't want to follow England's orders.
I'm sorry, one more time.
To stop obeying England.
Just England, to stop following England.
To separate.
To separate from England. Basically, and you're on the track for this. It was separation from England, but maybe the most important part. Why did they do it? What was the rationale? It was a legal justification for the separation from England. They basically listed all of those he's in there saying, this is what you've done wrong, this is what you've done wrong, this is what you've done wrong. And when a government fails to do what it's supposed to, it's our right and responsibility to overthrow it. So that's what they were doing in the Declaration. 3 who's and a what. What else do you have up here? Go ahead. 111. You remember what 111 was? Because I actually said that this is outdated. Go ahead, Lamont.
We've had 101 successful power changes in our presidential...
111 peaceful midterm and presidential elections. And I believe this book was from 08. So it's actually 113 now because we had the 2010 and the 2012 elections. So 113 peaceful presidential and midterm elections in American history. As far as politics and politicians and political science, I don't know that you've got to worry about those. Those are pretty straightforward. They were introductory, and I guess I had given you some articles regarding those. Initiative, referendum, and recall, though, might be kind of important. What was an initiative? Do you remember? Go ahead, Manuel.
It was like a project for the law.
I'm sorry, say again.
A project for the law.
A what for the law?
Project.
A project for the law. Go ahead, Lamont.
It's basically a bill that you can write on your own, and then you have to get signatures.
Yes.
And if it's passed by the people, it becomes law in your state.
Yeah, now, it is a project, but the trick on this, direct democracy is what these were examples of. And if you remember, the U.S. is basically a representative democracy. We elect people to represent for us, so we don't have to do all this dirty work or know all of these facts. Direct democracy is the idea that we rule ourselves. This is Sadig's kind of place. We rule. We don't need no government or the man leaning on us, so to
Sounds
speak.
American.
American, I like the way that sounds. Texan, yeah. Well, okay, for our purposes, the initiative. In an initiative, what you do, and it's just like you said, I'm going to draft a law. And when I draft this law, I got to collect signatures from eligible voters. And if I get enough signatures, this law is going to end up on the ballot. And the ballot is going to say, Law A, yes or no. And if you get more yeses than nos, your bill becomes law, even though the legislature had nothing to do with it, even if the legislature and the governor don't support it. That's direct democracy, where citizens make the law without the government. Go ahead, Adrian.
Does it have to be in the midterm election, or can it
No, it can be in any upcoming election, the next one that would actually occur.
But every 2 years, though, correct?
These are typically state or local type things. So actually, in some places, it doesn't have to be every 2 years. But yes, typically the bigger ones are the bigger turnout elections.
So like the one right now, it says, I think from Maryland, there's a law saying if they could make marijuana illegal, is that by the people or by the legislature?
That sounds like one that's come from the people, although I don't know the specifics of it, and I don't want to get too much into it right now just because we're really pushed for time. I don't want to confuse anybody. But for our purposes, with an initiative, bottom line is, if the people get this and they get the signatures and it's yes, it will become law. And I think I had given y'all the example that we wanted to put the 10 Commandments on the wall in North Carolina, and they promoted me to dean. Diana's like, 10 Commandments, what? Okay, bottom line is that, yeah, you can even pass something that's illegal in the form of an initiative. But ultimately, the courts are going to get their shot at it. Yes?
You said that direct democracy is like when people is ruling themselves.
People rule themselves.
Doesn't mean that like anarchy that they don't have a government?
It's different than that in the sense that you still have a government. It's just everybody votes on everything. So if I am in a representative system, I vote for you and you're my senator. If there's a direct democracy, there are no senators. Everybody votes on what they want to vote on. Or they don't vote on what they don't want to vote on. Or they get to initiate whatever bills they want to initiate. You know, that kind of a thing. And the chapter really says, in a country of 300 million people, we can't have a pure direct democracy in the U.S., but referendum, recall, and initiative are examples of ways that we can still do it. Does anybody remember what a referendum was?
It was like the DREAM Act thing where.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Go ahead.
Yeah, so then it was actually on the ballot, and then everybody in Maryland got to vote whether.
Okay, what's the difference? You're right, it ends up on the ballot. What's the difference? In an initiative, it's the people that put this on the ballot. Who does it in a referendum?
The politicians.
The politicians do. Some issues are so hot that politicians don't want to touch them, and effectively what they're going to do is they're going to punt. And in this, they're going to say, if I vote yes, I'm going to upset people. If I vote no, I'm going to upset a lot of people. So I'm going to put it on a referendum, and you people can decide what you want. And then, in fact, I've given the people their will. So that's what a referendum is. Ultimately, the people are deciding, but it's initiated a little bit more by the politicians. What was a recall? Go ahead, Lamont. It looks like you're ready for tomorrow or Friday.
Basically, the example we had was Arnold Schwarzenegger in
Yes.
California. It's basically when the people can choose to basically vote out their elected official before his or her term is over.
Yeah, that's right. The idea of a recall, and it was Gray Davis who was governor. He had not done anything illegal, but he had made some questionable decisions. So the people of California initiated a recall. And it's just like an initiative. You basically ask, I want such and such removed from office, whomever this politician is. And these are state elected officials. If you get a percentage of eligible voters that say yes, you will have a recall election virtually immediately. You don't wait for the 2 years or the 1 year, but it's basically immediately. And do you remember what the 2 questions were in an initiative?
Oh, yeah.
There were 2 questions. Go ahead.
Do you think the person should stay in office? And the second one is, who do you think should replace that?
Yeah, the first question is, should Gray Davis be recalled or removed from office? And if you say no, you're done. You want him to stay. If you say yes, question 2 is, who should replace Gray Davis? Who should fill the office? And at that point, you have all of these other people to choose from. Do you remember any of the ones from California?
Richard Simmons.
Richard Simmons, maybe Mr. Goodbody himself. Go ahead.
Gary Coleman.
Gary Coleman was one. Schwarzenegger obviously was one. Any others for the perverted people? Yeah, go ahead, Diana. Yeah.
Oh my God, no, the porn star.
I knew it. Yeah, the porn star. Angeline was one, if you remember.
Wasn't her
Mary
name Diana?
Carey was one, if you remember.
The sumo wrestler.
Oh
And
my
who
gosh,
was the
yes.
porn magazine guy?
Oh, the hustler, what was his name? The guy
Hustler magazine. Okay, you don't necessarily have to be perverted. Anybody? Who was the Hustler magazine guy? Larry Flint. Larry Flint was another one. All of these people got to run for office. And some people say, I like rule by the people. My contention is, if you got porn stars and Richard Simmons, and you got Larry Flint and Kerry Coleman, what are you talking about, Willis? And your best choice of the biggest state in the country, or what would be one of the biggest countries in the world if it was solo, is Schwarzenegger. Maybe you don't want direct democracy, but
You don't
that's
want
what
the
those were.
Terminator.
Any other questions up here? Freedom, order, and equality, I think, are pretty straightforward from chapter 1. But initiative, referendum, and recall, direct democracy, we got. The politicians is probably not that big of a deal, and I know we got who. Go ahead.
Are all those people going to be on the test?
I wouldn't say that they're all going to be on the test, but what I would say is that the better that you can explain something, the more points I can give you.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you have to know them? No. But if you do, that's probably a good start. Yes, Jenny.
So, for a portion of the quiz, like 5% of the quiz is gonna be like chapter questions?
20% of the quiz is